Hello, welcome. My name is Caroline. I'm from Germany. I'm a student of international business, and I'm here today with Danielle. And I will ask you maybe to introduce yourself quickly. Tell me a little bit about yourself, your work, your role, any passions or interesting activity that you're involved with.
Sure. Thanks so much, Caroline, for this and for the invitation for interview. My name is Daniel. I'm based in Barcelona in Spain, but I come from my family's from Russia and Scotland, but I grew up myself in Argentina. So those different experiences, I think, have led me to I think from a very young age, I've been involved in activism and campaigning, primarily kind of at the intersections of climate justice, poverty and historical memory. And so I've been working for the last 10 years really as a campaigner, as an artist, as an educator along those intersections. Professionally, I've worked for various organizations, for organizations like Oxfam, 350, the global campaign to demand climate justice, and currently working on a project called the Global Green New Deal, which is part of a coalition of many NGOs. But yeah, I think passions really is, I'm interested in really joining the dots and in joining really struggles that we have, seeing the many, many different crises that we're facing as an opportunity to work together and to build an economy that works for everyone and that addresses historical injustices. So I think that's where my key passion is.
Cool. Sounds very interesting. And I'm happy that you're here today and that you, agreed to get interviewed for this topic of also leadership and sustainability
Mm.
that we want to address. And I know that you have some interesting story to tell us and some insights about activism at university and education and sustainability and the combination of both. So yeah, could you maybe share that with us?
Sure. So I think the story I wanted to share really hits on, I think, what systems thinking is and what it means to embody principles of systems thinking as a group, as an activist group. And back when I was at university, I was part of, I was obviously very passionate about sustainability and also very passionate about understanding. I went to a university that had a lot of wealth. And I was constantly curious, what is it that I can do in these 3 years in a time of a climate crisis, of an incredible situation of injustice and inequality around the world? What is our role as students interested in sustainability with a university with that much wealth? And this was just before the kind of divestment movement really picked up. But I started meeting with other people from the university that had very different sustainability interests. And together we set up a little group called Positive Investment Cambridge. But I think what was beautiful about that group, and I go back to it because I think it's one of the healthiest experiences of activism I've had, is it was the diversity of the different visions that we all had. Often I think we have a temptation in activism to try and go focus on what's, I guess, the single issue campaigning, linear campaigning, where you identify a problem, you have a campaign that meets that problem with a solution, and you put all your energy in towards trying to kind of achieve that linear goal, going from A to B. There's a lot of value in that method, but systems thinking recognizes that what we face are wicked problems, right? Problems with multiple causes and multiple solutions, often problems with no solutions, and that can only be negotiated and addressed in nonlinear ways. And the complexity of the world is such that you always need to be looking at it from multiple perspectives to do it justice, right? That's another key principle in systems thinking. And what happened in Positive Investment Cambridge which was really useful, was we were able to find people with very different passions, even in that narrow world of sustainability at the university. So there were people that were interested in divestment, in getting the university to shed all the money that it had in polluting industries. There were people that were interested in greening the university infrastructure, right? So using deep investments across the university to put up solar panels, to proof buildings, to make sure that the university was at the highest standard possible in terms of zero carbon architecture. There were people that were interested in anti-corruption. A lot of rich oligarchs from around the world with incredibly questionable human rights and environmental records were using the university as a laundry machine to wash their reputations. And so from an anti-corruption perspective and a human rights perspective, a lot of us were interested in that. A lot of people interested in freedom of speech and the curriculum itself in the economics school, in the management school, but also very much in the scientific parts of the university. in the chemical engineering department, there were students that were frustrated with the fact that their department was sponsored by BP and by big oil companies, but also that what they were studying in their modules was very, very geared towards processes relevant to petrochemical engineering, when chemical engineering is incredibly broad and you can study all kinds of things. So there was a big frustration with the curriculum itself. There were frustrations at the university as well. There were students interested in essential medicines, that to make sure that the university research into healthcare that was of interest to public health, and especially to public health in some of the world's most poorest countries, that research shouldn't be privatized by private companies, that was public research from the university, and that anything to do with essential medicine, so research into malaria and encephalitis, that should be kept public and not privatized. So all of this was about, we had lots of different passions, lots of different interests in, I guess, what I could call intersectional sustainability. And rather than seeing these as differences, I think what was beautiful was we were able to see those differences as resources. And instead of narrowing down the campaign towards one particular linear objective, it became a space, I think, of really sharing possibilities, building some campaigns with particular objectives, but always being, I guess, expansive, of instead of just focusing on divestment, linking divestment with reinvestment. Instead of simply focusing on curriculum change in one department, understanding curriculum change is something that is cross-sectional, that should face every single department. So yeah, I think that experience, I think, really brought me really beautiful lessons about humility, first of all, in activism, that we can have passions, but there's always things that you can be learning from other people. That systems thinking isn't just a theory that you need to apply, but it's actually also a way of being together with other people. And finally, I think the importance, as I said before, of seeing relational or differences in the way we see the world, not as differences, but as resources. But there's a huge richness there always. And if you can build activism models or campaigning models that make the most of that richness, it might be harder to explain, it might be less simple or catchy for a marketing team, but in terms of your effectiveness, it's unbelievably more powerful and enriching for people involved. So I think that's a little story where Positive Investment Cambridge doesn't exist anymore as an organization. It was a coalition of people that learned from each other. But out of that coalition, incredible campaigns did grow, leading to lots of victories, but not in a beautiful way. Those people along the years that I've kept in touch with as well, everyone has, that experience has really shaped people and left really good seeds. I think activism has the potential to, people's experiences with activism early in their life either has the potential to alienate them or to push them away from campaigning, or to really leave them in a position where they see activism not as something you do as part of a group, but as a part of your way of life, a way of being more conscious in the way you live in the world. And I think beautifully, those of us who are involved, I think we're left with a really healthy legacy, I think, of activism. So I think that's my little window, my little story. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Daniel, for this inspiring words. Like, it sounds really, really cool what you achieved. So maybe you talked about some victories that you had there. Maybe as an inspiration for others, what was one thing you're particularly proud of that you achieved at university through this activism?
I think so. In the more concrete sense, this was when I was Positive Investment Cambridge, was about 8 years ago, and we initiated, I think, together collectively, a big conversation on divestment and reinvestment at the university, which till then had been had, but not really powerfully. And I think we brought significant new energy and transformed the debate, and I think laid the foundation that other groups and other activists would then pick up, leading to what only was confirmed a few days ago, but was divestment confirmed by Cambridge University, which is one of the richest universities in the world, and has the power, because of its wealth, really to send a bit of a shockwave across investors. So that, I think that in concretely, the victory was really laying the foundation for the victory that would come many years later on. I think it's also a really important lesson of activism. If you see it in a linear way, it's this person does this, but I see us, all of us collectively achieve victories. The people that came before us laid the foundation for us to do what we did. And there's constantly people building on each other. We're all on the shoulders of each other all the time. And I think that's also a systems thinking is the sister of relational thinking, of seeing ourselves as part of ecosystems of relationships. And I think our contribution was to leave some seeds for future activists, just as we had picked them up as well. So I think that was concretely a major, major victory. But I think, once again, the biggest victory for me really is that we were able to really build a healthy ecosystem that nourished all of us while we were there. And I think the long-term implications of leaving a healthy legacy within people was the biggest impact, I think. All of us have ended up, I think, most of us have ended up in interesting positions doing really interesting work. And in part, that's because of, I think, an environment that nourished that.
Cool. Yeah, that's awesome. So maybe now reflecting on what you've talked about, what would be the one key takeaway, maybe in one sentence, yeah, from your activism experience?
Question boundaries. I think it's not one sentence, but the limits of what is possible in the world are there to be moved. And the ways in which we've been taught to understand issues or break down the world around us is there to be questioned. And as an activist, it's your responsibility to think about possibilities, think about how you can shake the world up, and also think about how you can shake the world in the way that it's taught or explained in mainstream ways. So as soon as you start doing that, you open up fertile ground for campaigning. But I would always encourage people, question the boundaries that you're given, question the possibilities that are in front of you, and an open space to do things.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely true. I totally agree that you should always question what is the present state, and yeah, push boundaries. That's true. And that could also be like what I wanted to ask you next is like a best practice for students, but already this questioning boundaries is actually a practice, I would say. Do you have anything more to add what students can use for yeah, to get better at systems thinking and maybe get better at thinking beyond current boundaries?
I think an incredible legacy given to us by the feminist movement is the importance of valuing care, and care as a practice. I think systems thinking that is purely to do with thinking is often quite hollow. It can lead to just, it's joining the dots about the world. But I think the best kind of systems thinking recognizes that human beings, that we ourselves are part of the systems that we're working to change, that we're not apart from those systems, we're a part of those systems. And therefore, we need to start embodying through our behaviors, through our practices, the ways that we work, the ways that we think and feel, the world that we want to build. And if the world that we want to build, if one of the key values, I think, for that world is care. And I think often in activism, we tend to think in a way which is, we'll get to, we're campaigning in a linear way, and then we're about sustainability, so we need to campaign for sustainability. But often the practices that we'll use in trying to get there will not reflect sustainability. Care is a core element of sustainability. And so I think thinking through often the question of like, how do we campaign, or what can we do that's effective? It thinks a lot about the what and rarely about the how. And the how often includes the what and the how. If you build a healthy ecosystem of activism where there's space for critical thinking, for systemic thinking, for nourishing collaboration and for care, often the answers come out naturally. And so I would encourage people, if they're interested in deepening their practice of systems thinking, to really think of it as deepening also their practice of care, and thinking about systems thinking as a practice as well for yourself. And if you're struggling to, if systems thinking is something you see for the world outside of you and not for the world inside of you, then I don't think we're doing it justice. If that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. Also like this point of starting with yourself, yeah, to maybe achieve something bigger. Yeah.
Sure. And it's a balance, because I think you can get too internal. It's all, there's that we have a systems crisis and we have to be changing the world around us. And I think that the system that does, in a culture that is quite individualistic, we're often handed the responsibility, it's on you, that only through your lifestyle choices can you address the climate crisis. And so it's important to balance it. We can only be working on collective crises with collective movements. Yet we are part of those movements and we are important and we are valuable. And doing the work of also questioning our internal beliefs is crucial as well, especially if we need to be able to do activism. You need to have a lot of self-love, self-confidence, and humility. And those are traits that without introspection, it's hard to bloom or develop. So I would just encourage people to dance. People always talk in systems thinking about dancing with the system, about questioning binaries or one option or the other. You have to learn to do everything at once, and that means dancing. So you have to dance with individual work and collective work. You have to dance with building a nice ecosystem of activism, yet not focusing only on that. Learning how to dance and be flexible is like, it's a key competency of systems thinking. So I would encourage people, yeah, to learn how to dance better. Yeah.
That was awesome. That was a nice comparison with the dancing. Yeah. Cool. So, yeah, thank you very much for taking your time and telling all these very valuable insights and about system thinking. And yeah, I really appreciate that you contributed to the Next Gen Lead program and that you took this time today. And yeah, might contact you again later for further information if we need them. And feel free to contact us also, yeah, anytime. And yeah, so thank you very much.
No, thanks so much for the invitation, Carolin. All right, then.